And Councilmember Teresa Keng, would you like to say a few words before we get
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Yana, for helping us organize this meeting. And thank you also, Amy and Johanna, for being here. And thank you, of course, our Chief of Police, who has been newly sworn in and this just a couple months ago, and becoming our new chief to serve us. And we really appreciate that. And so, as we know, one of our residents' top concern is public safety, and recently we're seeing different types of theft, burglary, smash and grab, and just different things that and we appreciate the last couple of years the Fremont Police actually has been helping us out on different things, such as we have those sideshows, and we have some events that happen in our community, and we have reached out to the police department for help, and we're having receiving some good response. So I wonder if Janet can also you can put your email in the chat, so our community members can reach out to you when they have questions, or how to resolve some where how to reach you. And so I really want to thank again for our Police Chief Washington to be here. So Chief Washington has been serving our community in the police department for how many years is exactly? 20, is that 20?
24.
24. Okay, 24 years. And he has been rising through the ranks, and he has been working as a school resource officer, and in different departments he has different experiences throughout the department. And most recently he was one of the 3 captains that worked directly under the police chief, Peterson. So he is more than qualified for this new position, and we are so appreciative of all of your work and of all the police department staff's work for our city. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Chief Washington. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Council Member, and thank you for those kind words. I'm just very happy to have this opportunity tonight to engage with all of you, give you some information on where we are as far as crime and some of the strategies that we have implemented. But I just want to say good evening to District 1. This is our first district meeting that I've had the opportunity to have as the new chief. I know there might be others joining from around the city, but really we tried to tailor a lot of this, although we're going to give some general statistics about the city as a whole. We want to really tailor this to District 1. So we'll get into that a little bit in just a little bit. So just as an introduction, for those of you who do not know me or not familiar with me, like the council member stated, I have worked here in this fine community for over 24 years. I've held a variety of positions and ranks throughout the years. And what that has done is it has allowed me to continue to draw upon those experiences from the past and my connection to this community to guide our department into the future and reaffirm our commitment to professional and responsible law enforcement for not only your district, but the entire city. So again, it is with great pleasure and honor that I have the opportunity to serve this great community, engage with all of you tonight. I hope, again, you find this information useful. I'm going to share with you statistics and some crime trends. But I look forward to taking questions at the end of the presentation as well and hearing from you. So although this will be a short presentation, really the value that I get as a new chief is hearing from our community members and understanding their concerns and perspectives. If there is a question that I or my staff cannot answer, we'll certainly note that, and we'll try to turn that information around to you in short order. So we'll go ahead and get started here. We've gone through the introduction. I'll talk a little bit about my transition plan and goals, and then we'll give you some statistics and some crime updates, and then again, answer a few questions. So I'll start by talking a little bit about the Chief's transition plan and why this is important. So as the complexity of law enforcement continues to evolve, as well as the unique crimes that we have been experiencing here in Fremont, regionally and nationally, it's important that we have clear objectives and goals as we move forward. So in summary, the 6 main goals that I'd like to accomplish and help guide the department into the future is to, 1, enhance community relationships, trust, and police legitimacy. That starts with meetings like tonight. We want to enhance these relationships because we know we are only as effective as our relationship and support within the community. Number 2, I want to assess organizational effectiveness and efficiency, understanding that we have limited resources and we have to use those resources effectively to help protect our community. 3, conduct a comprehensive review of policies and procedures. That's important to ensure that we are complying with the various laws and professionalism that you all expect from your police department. And then we want to provide better staffing, professional development, training, and education for our staff. Investing in our people is so important because the more we can invest in our people, the more service or the better service they're going to be able to deliver to the community. Number 5 is we want to increase internal communication, team building, and employee wellness. Once again, making sure that we're taking care of our employees, we're communicating the goals and objectives and mission of the police department, and making sure we have all the tools necessary to serve. And then understanding that we are one department in a very large city, we want to build City of Fremont partnerships and support any of the city initiatives that are put before us and do our part to be, like I said, a good partner. So we'll jump right into it with a crime update. And again, it's just a reminder that this data is through November 30th, 2021, unless it's otherwise noted. But violent crime is our top priority. We will devote any and all resources necessary to mitigate the impact that violent crime has on our community. So as you can see in this slide, our shooting incidents and gun-related, firearm-related incidents have gone up. We started to see a rise in 2020 with 19 shooting incidents and then 44 firearm-related arrests. As you can see, thus far in 2021, and we still have a few weeks to go, we've had over 39 shooting incidents and 61 firearm-related arrests. As a result of this increase in violence, we quickly formed a gun violence reduction team earlier this year in order to devote resources to try to mitigate the impact of gun violence in the community of Fremont. So far, we've made about 20 arrests of priority subjects identified by this specialized team. We want to focus on quick apprehension efforts to prevent additional incidents. That was the purpose of this team. And our goal is to investigate and reduce shootings and gun crimes. You might note that the news, especially the national news, this increase in gun violence is not unique to Fremont. We've experienced this throughout the nation. I've been in contact with chiefs regionally and throughout the nation, and they all have experienced an increase in gun violence. So homicides and serious assaults. As you can see, we have one more homicide than we did this time last year. So we have a total of 3. We have been able to solve all 3 homicides this year, which is very good. And you see that there has been an increase in serious assaults and attempt homicide as well. And those 2 statistics are noted here in the 2021 graph. It's important to understand that although I am speaking about these statistics, I forgot to note that I don't want to come across giving the impression that certain crimes are not important or those type of things. We're talking about 3 homicides, which means that 3 people lost their lives. I want that number to be 0 every single year. But I'm just putting things in perspective as far as, say, Fremont's homicide rate versus a city like Oakland or some other jurisdiction. So when I talk about a relatively low crime rate, that's not to minimize the impact that that crime rate is having on our communities. Next, robberies. You can see there's been a steady decline over the years, thanks to the efforts of our staff. So the key is quick response through investigation and subsequent apprehension, collaboration with our outside agencies to share regional suspect information, and let's not forget about our community. We are effective as a police department because of the cooperation we have within our community. So those are things to keep in mind as we go through these statistics. Residential burglaries, you can also see that we have been in a pretty good decline, which is good overall. We did have a spike in commercial burglaries last year, likely due to COVID and the shutdown where people weren't at businesses. And so it created a crime of opportunity for thieves to break into commercial businesses. We've seen that level off, and that has been consistent with people going back into the office, and there's been less opportunity. As well as we tried to mitigate some of these commercial burglaries by adjusting our patrol model to ensure that we had coverage with our limited resources. Vehicle burglaries as well, we have seen a steady decline, and that's a good sign as well. So high visibility patrols, like I talked about, as a deterrent in identified hotspots, and that's where our crime analysis unit really is a value to this community, because they can direct us to locations in which we can deploy our resources most effectively. We focus on repeat offenders as well. We know that there are a small number of offenders out there that cause the most harm to our community. So we try to use intelligence-led policing to focus in on those individuals, understanding that they are having a huge impact on the crime rate. And then technology. Technology is another resource that is a force multiplier for us. Technology throughout the city, like cameras, drones, our real-time information center, and then all of you as well. You know, registering your cameras with the police department has been proven to be effective to solve some of these crimes and apprehend some of these offenders. Grand theft, you can see that there's been quite a bit of a spike in 2021 versus 2020. We think that that is attributed to the trend of catalytic converter thefts. We average about 65 thefts per month. So if you start to average that into these statistics, you can see how it's really going to spike our crime stats. Investigative focus on secondhand dealers and recyclers has been something that we try to partner with our regional law enforcement agencies to try to mitigate the impact that these crimes are having. You can just do a quick Google search, and again, you know that this is not a Fremont issue. This is a regional, if not a national issue that law enforcement is trying to mitigate by suggesting legislation and certain penalties to help deter these types of crimes. Sideshow, or illegal street racing activity. Obviously in District 1, this has been a topic of concern. We have been very responsive to hearing those concerns. So by utilizing traffic and patrol teams deployed at key hotspots during peak hours of activity, we have tried our best to try to mitigate and make Fremont a less attractive place for this type of activity to occur, understanding how dangerous it is to our community. We also focus on regional information sharing to deter high-profile events occurring in the city. So it has to be a partnership with all of our surrounding agencies to be effective, because we know just by the fact that these are vehicles, this type of activity is highly mobile and can develop spontaneously. In fact, recognizing that there is a need to try to do some proactive deterrent measures, we did authorize overtime recently when we did see a spike in this type of activity to help deploy resources into areas in which we felt this type of activity would likely occur. We think that that has paid off. You can see the spike in 2020 where it went up to 139 of these incidents. And then so far this year, we've had 92. Now, we haven't been able to eliminate this activity completely, but through our strategies, cooperation with the community, overtime, and deploying resources effectively, we think we're starting to make an impact on sideshow activity. homeless related calls for service. So you could see that we are trending slightly down from years past. We average about 9 homeless related calls per day. Persons suffering from mental illness, that also is trending down. And we believe that both of these statistics are trending down because of the efforts of our mobile evaluation team and the support units that are tasked with going out and responding to these particular quality of life issues. And so we want to, going forward, continue to support the efforts of MET and all of the other support units, working with human services and other city departments to ensure that we continue this downward trend in the statistics associated with homelessness and those suffering from mental illness. Hate crimes. So it's important to understand that these statistics, before we get into the statistics, what a hate crime is. So a hate crime is a crime against a person, group, or property, and it has to be motivated by a victim's real or perceived protected social group, a disability, gender, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and or association with the person or group with one or more of these actual perceived characteristics. Hate crimes are serious crimes that may result in imprisonment or jail. We take this very seriously. We will drop everything and investigate these crimes with appropriate resources. Now that's different from a hate incident, which is not necessarily a crime. A hate incident is an action or behavior motivated by hate, but which, for one or more reasons, is not a crime. So name calling, insults, that's not a crime. Displaying hate material on your own property would not necessarily rise to criminal activity. Posting hate material that does not result in property damage. Distribution of material with hate messages in public areas also. So you can understand how it may be despicable, disgusting, disrespectful, inappropriate, but sometimes we are not able to make an arrest or investigate it as a crime if it doesn't meet a certain criteria. So as you can see, in 2017, we had 2 reported hate incidents. In 2018, there was a little bit of an uptick. However, I think there was one incident that had multiple incidents embedded, which caused that spike. And then we've had about 4 for the last couple of years. And now, so far this year, we have investigated 3 hate crimes for the city of Fremont. Okay, so that's kind of a general overview of the city of Fremont as a whole. And now what I'm going to do is turn it over to one of our managers who oversees our intelligence and analysis unit. And these folks are critical because these folks help drive the entire police department's goals and objectives on how to mitigate crime and the impact of crime in specific areas and neighborhoods. And so I'll allow Joanna Candidate to talk about District 1 and the crime comparison. So Joanna.
Thank you, Chief. Hello, District 1. This is our first time at really being able to break down the data so granularly for a particular community. So I hope this is helpful. And as the Chief said, we're happy to answer any questions. Just to clarify, these figures are from the first of the year through December 10th. So almost the full year, but not quite. And then compared to the same time frame of the previous year. So to start with the map on the right, you'll see this is a standard crime analysis heat map. And the red indicates the greater volume of police reporting activity. So you see the greatest amount in the Fremont-Paseo area. And it's worth noting that the red does not necessarily indicate crime. Those are police reports, which include many reports for miscellaneous public service, suspicious circumstances, found property, missing persons, a whole multitude of categories, and of course crime, but there's quite a variety in the data displayed on the map. And so to get into the statistics, I won't go line by line for everything, as there's not a lot of change in several, but as you see, there was one homicide this year. And as the chief mentioned, that was solved. The suspect was arrested. Our robberies are the same, and fortunately, as the residential burglaries continue to trend down, District 1 also saw that decrease. Our auto burglary has also significantly turned down, which is particularly great since you do have multiple commercial centers that have been hit hard in the past. And of course, there's still an issue and patrol is still paying attention to it, but a 26% decrease is nice to see. And conversely, grand theft, which is essentially most of our catalytic converter thefts, is significantly high. Of the 134 grand thefts, which is theft where the property is valued at $950 or more, approximately 100 of those 134 were catalytic converters. So that is the bulk of grand theft in District 1. And then I would just jump to reports. So interestingly, there was virtually no change, almost the exact same amount as last year. And then calls for service. Just to explain to you, our calls for service, they're not police reports, but they're documented incidents. Generally, they're generated by 911 emergency calls and non-emergency calls. But in this instance, also self-initiated activity. So these are all calls, again, for service or officers being proactive. But not all calls generate a police response. Sometimes dispatchers refer them to our online reporting system for a variety of crimes that you can find on our website. And then some things are just non-criminal in nature, private tows, or some of these stats, many of these stats include wireless 911, disconnects, etc. So, so thus far, there have been 96,000 calls for service. So that's an awful lot for our dispatchers to take in. And along the calls for service are the 415H calls. This is what the chief referenced in our homeless calls for disturbance, or I'm sorry, our disturbance calls involving homeless. So there has been an increase in those in your community. And then finally, I like to highlight proactive calls for service. This is actually a combination of several call types that our officers use when they're not responding to an emergency or a call from a community member. These are the calls that they initiate on their own. And these are mostly preventative patrols in hotspot areas or traffic complaint areas. So you can see that you've had a significant increase in your community of officers spending time in various hotspots through your community. And those are primarily Charter Square, 99 Ranch Market, well, Motel 6 North in Charter Square, and Lucky's Ardenwood Plaza, and the Park and Ride. Those are the primary hotspots in your community. That's all I have for the stats, Chief.
All right, thank you, Joanna. As we start to wind down the presentation and move into questions, we wanted to remind everyone to stay involved and connect with us with the community events and Neighborhood Crime Watch. Sign up for NICSL if you have not, and here's some information on how to stay connected with our department. So with that, I think, Council Member, we'll turn it back over to you for any comments, and then we'll just open it up for any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for this report and transition plan. I think it kind of, gives us a big picture of what, the trending crime and what's been going up or down. And I did see that, the grand theft has gone up 83% in District 1, which, probably is one of the top concerns for our residents here. So probably would come up with a question, and then perhaps Chief or one of the officers can help us kind of understand, where we are with it and what we can do to help mitigate that.
Yes, and on that particular topic, on grand theft, so we are in a period in which we are considering different resource deployment models, which may help with that as well. Understanding again that we have limited resources, so this data is very important to us, and we have to spread those resources around the entire department. But when we see spikes like that, we quickly try to prioritize those particular areas and then devote some resources into those areas. But it starts with communication and cooperation with our community members. That's how we have had a relatively low overall crime rate with this city. It's based on the cooperation that we have with our community members. Calling us when there's a suspicious activity, registering your cameras with the police department, purchasing video cameras and helping us with that. And so, yeah, we do recognize the spike there, and but you know it's a significant spike throughout the city, and we're certainly aware of it and trying to come up with other strategies to help mitigate the impact.
Great, thank you so much. And probably we can open for questions, and then I can ask other questions that's not covered.
This is Srinivas. I have typed a couple of questions. First of all, thank you all for hosting this great interactive session. My questions are, is this data available on a public URL or website? The second question is, does Fremont Police Department have adequate staffing levels? And the last one is, repeat offenders being let loose. That has increased, break-ins and burglaries and stuff like that. So are they being imprisoned, or is it a legislation that they're lacking? What is the district attorney's stand on this? Thank you.
I don't know if it was a bad connection on my end, but I couldn't catch any of that. I apologize.
The question also on the chat.
Yeah, the questions in the chat, Chief. So if you allow me, Srinivas, I'll go ahead and relay the question you said, and I'll repeat it out loud so everybody else can hear it before the chief addresses it. The first thing is they'd like to know if this data is going to be available on a public domain. And I could just go ahead and answer that question. This meeting and the statistical information provided tonight is going to be available on our website and on our YouTube channel, most likely by next week. So you can all review it then later. And then I can also share it with everyone, or with Teresa to share with the community members in a link. The second question was in regards to Fremont PD staffing levels. If you can provide some insight on that, Chief.
Sure. No, thank you for that question. And indeed, one of the things that is embedded in the transition plan for me is trying to identify our needs as we move forward. We are currently in the process of identifying what we anticipate as far as staffing needs for our city, not only now, but moving forward. So we are developing that right now. We understand that we have to grow as an agency. One of the ongoing challenges for us right now is, although we're authorized for 199 officers, this profession is increasingly difficult to recruit for, and that's for a variety of reasons, but mainly because of there's a lot of negativity surrounding law enforcement right now, and a lot of it is unfair. This is a noble profession. There is a lot of good work that goes on day in and day out. And sometimes, we have groups or individuals that want to paint law enforcement with a very broad brush, which is unfair, but we will still continue to do our jobs despite that, that sentiment. So we are struggling with recruiting individuals into the profession right now. I think we have about 15 or 16 vacancies that we would like to fill. But we are in competition with other police agencies throughout the region, which makes it a challenge. I do see our department growing throughout the years. I want to grow in a very steady manner, understanding that we could use some more resources. So it's going to take working with our city leadership and identifying our priorities and our needs and anticipating our needs as we move forward. But yeah, staffing levels are stable right now. However, there is a need to grow.
Thank you, Chief. And then the last question from that community member is, can you provide some insight on repeat offenders being let loose due to A, COVID constraints, and B, prison accommodation limitations? The community has a general feeling that it's just wreaking havoc within burglaries and break-ins in their community.
Agreed. I don't know how else to respond to that. The COVID, our limitations on our ability to hold certain individuals for certain types of crimes is a challenge for us as law enforcement. Our fundamental purpose is to help protect our communities. And so when COVID hit, there were rules and laws that were put into place because they did not want to overpopulate our jails or prisons, in which we did not have the ability to take certain type of criminals into physical custody, and we had to release them on a notice to appear. So I do think that we are swinging back the other way as far as loosening some of those COVID constraints, as you put it. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge. Accountability is fundamentally embedded in our ability to be effective as a law enforcement agency. And without that accountability, it really makes it an ongoing challenge. That does not deter us, however. We will continue to serve this community and apprehend those individuals and do all we can under the law to hold criminals accountable for their actions.
Thank you, Chief. Sai, I see your hand raised, but I also see your question in the chat. Would you like to unmute and ask it, or would you like me to relay?
I would prefer for you to just read it out to be quicker.
Okay, great. Chief, what is your overreaching vision and strategy for Fremont PD? And are you going to focus on increasing proactive policing, community partnerships, and prosecution power?
Yes, well, the last part, the prosecution power, that is not within my ability to make that happen. We present the case to the district attorney. We make the arrest. We put the case together, and it is up to the district attorney's office on whether or not they prosecute a case. That is of no consequence to us, whether we believe that it's going to be prosecuted or not. We will continue to do our job and present the best case possible for prosecution. What was the first part of that, Yannette?
Your overreaching vision and strategy for Fremont PD, and will you be increasing proactive policing and community partnerships?
Yes, so we have redefined proactive policing to include community interaction. So proactive policing for years and years and years was defined as going out, writing as many traffic citations, making as many arrests as you can. And what we found is it has to be a combination of that, as well as outreach and engagement with the community. Those two things go hand in hand. So we've redefined recently proactivity to include what I just talked about. We need officers to get out in the community, hear the perspectives of the community, and that way we can be more responsive. So that for sure is something that we have done recently. But the main goals for me as I move forward as the new police chief here is to ensure that we're being as effective as we can as a law enforcement agency. Again, getting back to our fundamental purpose, and that's to help protect our community from harm. So we have to identify the harm that's being caused in our community and who's causing that harm, and use the tools that you all trust us to utilize responsibly to apprehend and hold accountable those individuals. So that will continue to be my goal. That will continue to be something that I will communicate to our staff as we move forward.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to pivot back to our raised hands. Latoya Pitcher, do you have a question?
I actually have three, so forgive me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you talked about community engagement, and so I wanted to know a little bit more about that. I am not a Fremont resident. However, my cousin is, and he is an adult who lives with autism. And he also works, he usually does the graveyard shift. He works at the Target, and he commutes specifically by walking or biking because he does not drive. He has been robbed twice. And the thing is, even though he does not call for help because he struggles with interacting with people he doesn't know, I'm kind of curious what your community engagement plan looks like with persons who may need a different approach in interacting with law enforcement.
Well, thank you for that that question. I'm sorry that you know, they had to experience what they experienced in being victimized. So that is indeed embedded in my transition plan. In the transition plan, it talks about the piece about community engagement is understanding that we police the entire community to include those who are part of vulnerable populations or maybe respond differently and those type of things. So whether it's, we put on training last year for officers to go through on this very topic of autism, because we know that interactions with persons who are autistic requires a special sense of knowledge to understand what they might be going through. So we required that last year. And as I took over as chief, I made that part of my transition plan to ensure that we had ongoing training and understanding of some of these vulnerable populations. We have a huge population, and we have the California School for the Deaf and Blind here in Fremont, and that's another population that we want to better understand and ensure that we can serve those communities effectively as we move forward. So that's part of the community engagement as well. To your point, is well taken. And that has been thought about and is embedded in the transition plan that I put out a couple of months ago.
Thank you. And then my second question, and I'll go ahead and mute again, is also around community engagement. What kind of partnerships or strategic partnerships do you have in a plan for, or maybe are considering planning for, around deterring crime? So I think there are probably multiple reasons as to the spikes in crime. I think some of the comments in the chat may be part of it, but I think there's also maybe something to do with employment opportunity, maybe some economic justice opportunities as well for persons of color, specifically Black, Indigenous persons of color, as well as the Latinx and the immigrant populations. What kind of partnerships do you see coming, or is that something you're even considering at this point?
Yeah, for sure. I'll actually defer to Yanette on some of the community engagement efforts, but to your point, it's getting a better understanding at some of the root causes behind some of the crime, right, that we're experiencing. To your point, well articulated. It's a bigger conversation than just someone committing a crime and the police department taking some sort of action. You know, the way we're going to improve as a society is really getting to those root causes, like you mentioned. And so having those conversations, I recently reached out to the NAACP to have some engagement and understanding of some of the concerns and how police community relations should go. And so it's really, again, it goes down to our listening sessions and engagement with our community to get a better understanding, and then paying attention to some of the additional causes that might be out there that is causing some of these spikes. Another example is like homelessness, right? So we know, you know, not having a house, not having somewhere to stay. If you have a person who has not eaten in 5 days and they go out and steal a sandwich from a store, well, that is a crime, but there is a cause that may not just be based on greed or a person's, you know, in consideration of the law and those type of things. It may be a basic survival reaction to wanting to survive and not having any money. So those type of things. But that's a societal issue that it's not a problem that the police department is going to solve alone. We need social services and all these other support networks in order to really have an impact on some of these crimes. But Yannette, did you have anything to add on that?
I don't want to take too much time away from everybody else because I know it's going to, be very detailed. But you are always welcome to reach out to me. Depending on where your cousin lives, I also sent you an email on some strategies. My email address directly to you, Latoya. Please reach out to me. I have some strategies that we can kind of help, and hopefully get some additional officers in that area. In regards to community engagement, again, it's just going out there, meeting people, letting the community know who they have as a resource here at the police department, not only from sworn police officers, but from our civilian staff who have the flexibility to work with our community in different ways. We look forward to, one, open to suggestions. We want to hear what things that, you might think are helpful, because this is where you all live. So it's important to hear from all of you. As well as we have, plans in the future, especially once we're able to, be a little bit more freely out in the community without these COVID restrictions. It's important for us to have those more intimate interactions face to face, because as you know, it's a little hard to get personal via video and get to know everybody. And I think it's important for all of us to get to know each other as individuals, first and foremost, so that we can begin to build those trusting relationships with one another. I'm going to switch over. We have several questions coming in, Chief. So another question we have is somebody stated that they see many videos posted from door cameras, but typically the resolution isn't as well, and it's not sufficient enough to identify the suspects. And they were hoping that we had some recommendations for homeowners on what type of systems they should be getting to maximize the value to the Fremont Police Department.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying, yeah, there are products out there with high quality. However, we have to be careful for recommending a particular brand over another brand. But that might be some information. I think we have a list or something like that, Yannette, that we can maybe share at a later date. But there are, we do recommend that you get a camera that is high quality, because that will help with, identifying license plates and characteristics of a person who committed the crime. But maybe we can share that later, Yannette.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that specific question, on the Fremont PD's YouTube channel, we actually have a very thorough explanation by one of our detectives in the crime analysis unit, who is really quite our department's expert and has a technical presentation with those specific recommendations that may be helpful for homeowners in this area. Another question is, what is the plan between city and the Fremont PD to address these known hotspots? And, why can't we basically swarm these areas such as Motel 6 that are, in order to drastically reduce the risks that are being posed? One of the comments is that right now that specific area is very poorly littered, kind of that broken window theory behind that area.
Yeah, and so if we have identified areas, to the second part of that is poorly lit and those type of things, we can have someone come out and look at that. Our community engagement unit does a great job of coming out and making some recommendations on how to make that area less attractive to criminal activity. But the plan to address known hotspots, that plan, it's not really a plan, it's ongoing. That's the value that our manager candidate has, because every week we're getting a brief on where these incidents are popping up, and we are trying to develop plans in which we can deploy our resources very responsibly. So when it talks about swarming a particular area, that can happen occasionally, but you might remember the issue with doing that in a sustainable way is that the city is almost 90 square miles and 230,000 people. So if we deploy all of our resources in one area, then that's going to leave the rest of the city exposed. So we have to balance and use some strategy and thought into how we deploy our resources. and evaluate the harm that it's causing and then prioritize that, which doesn't allow us to get to everything all the time immediately, but we do make that assessment on a weekly basis. I don't know if you have anything to add, Joanna, on that, how we kind of strategize.
Well, Chief, to your point, it is built into their every shift. Officers are, when they are not responding to emergency calls or calls for service, they know where to go, and they are responding. And it might only be 2 minutes, and sometimes it's a half hour driving around the lot, the back lot, the surrounding area, looking for anything suspicious. And again, if they're just deterring activity, the criminal sees the car in the lot and drives away, we consider that a success.
Sai, go ahead. You were raising your hand. It looks like you had a follow-up as well in the chat to that.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate you taking the time here. Councilmember Keng, thank you for setting this up. And Janet, as always, approachable, accessible, and truly appreciate everything you do and the rest of the force does to keep us safe here. Coming back to the hotspots question here, but it just seems like some of these spots seem to be areas where there's congregation. It's almost like a career, people make a career out of coming out here for whatever reason, right? Hitting up the Motel 6 area. We know what happened near the massage parlor, right, adjacent, right, by Fremont Boulevard. And the question is, like, why does it take forever to, eliminate? Why aren't we able to eliminate that risk from its root cause, right? The entrance to the city is littered. There's broken glass bulbs all around, and it just seems to attract the wrong kinds of actors here into the city, while providing them quick egress out of the city onto 880, right? We certainly don't have the safest cities adjacent to us, and that's just a known fact. And we're bearing the brunt of that, right? And this goes back to my third question. I'll wrap up. Can you please revisit your beat boundaries so there's increased patrolling, particularly during nights and weekends, from that 880 Fremont Boulevard stretch right down to Brookvale, all the way up to Ardenwood, because that little triangle, it's just, it's lonely. We don't see enough of the men and women in blue, and at the risk of some of us maybe even getting traffic tickets, for speeding occasionally. But you know what? We'd love to have you around here. We want to see you around, and you're part of a community. We're neighbors, and we'd like to see you here. We'd love for you to have maybe a substation here, have a community-centered EMS, fire, and police all together, so that the north of Fremont isn't a forgotten part of Fremont. Thank you.
Well, I can definitely say we have not forgotten about you all. I promise you that. We love all corners of this fine city. But I do hear your point. A substation is probably not practical right now, only because we don't have enough staffing to really sustain it, right? So if you have officers that are stationed at a substation, 3 or 4 officers, that means that you don't have 3 or 4 officers somewhere else, those type of things. But I do hear your point. Because of the position of the northern part of our city, you may not see officers patrolling as often as you would like. It's kind of good and bad, because if you're not seeing a lot of police activity, that means that there's not a lot of police activity, and maybe those resources are somewhere else where maybe there's a major crime or stabbing or something like that. But I understand how important it is for the community to feel a sense of comfort knowing that you have the watchful eye of our officers patrolling your neighborhood. So I will tell you this, that we will take a look at that area, and I will request some additional patrols as we can in that particular area. We will certainly do that, okay?
I don't have any additional questions in the chat, Chief. If anybody else has any additional questions for the Chief or any other member of our team, feel free to send a message or raise your hand. If not, I'd be happy to turn it over to Councilmember King if you have any last words before we begin winding down the meeting.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Oh, no worries. I do see there was one question that perhaps was missed. It said, can we spread information about the hotspots mentioned earlier so folks can be on the lookout?
Yeah, so I think I might have responded to that, maybe directly, my apologies. So like I mentioned earlier, this PowerPoint is going to be made available on our website and our YouTube channel. So you can go ahead and, take a closer look at where those hotspots are. But as Manager Kennedy mentioned, those spots are really around the shopping center areas, Fremont, Dakota, the Ranch 99 market area, and then I believe some of the industrial areas over, in the very North Ardenwood area. But we will definitely share that with everybody. And it looks like somebody's raising their hand. Is that Rapal? We can't seem to hear you.
Okay.
There you go.
Go ahead.
All right. No, I just want to take this a minute to thank Chief Washington. Thank you very much for all the community engagement. We appreciate what you're trying to do. And again, welcome again to Fremont. We met Yeneth yesterday. Thank you very much for all the insights and spending time with us last night, Yeneth. We totally appreciate all you are trying to do and all the help that we are getting from you, or engagement we are getting from you. Councilwoman Keng, thank you again for setting this up and for all your support. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Umesh has their hand up.
That was just Umesh. I just wanted to thank.
That was
That was, okay.
Awesome. All right. So if there's no other questions, we will close the meeting. So, I just want to thank again Yeneth for organizing the meeting and also being our community engagement person, always keeping on top of things and answering our questions, reaching out to us. And also want to thank Amy and let me see. Oh, oops. Yeah, Amy and Johanna for being here, and of course our newly sworn in Chief Washington for being here and your many years of service for us. And I think that often you guys are not appreciated enough, and especially with the climate. But I know that we can always make improvements to the department, but we definitely value community safety and we appreciate all of your work. So yeah, so thank you everyone for being here tonight and asking all the questions. I know people have been having a lot of concerns with the recent different crimes in or outside of our city. And so I think having you guys here explaining the trends and what we're doing to mitigate these crimes that's been happening really gives us an assurance of what we're doing to make our city safe. So yeah, just appreciate all of you guys and thank you again, everyone, for being here. So I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday. And I put my email up in the chat earlier. You can always reach me for any community concerns in your neighborhood. And I will, of course, get back to you. And I also, if you want to, I can meet in person or I can give you a call back or, yeah, different ways that we can communicate. So again, have a good night, everyone, and have a great holiday season.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Sai, are you still on? There was a question that was sent to me directly. I'll have to try to reach out to them. Thank you, Amy, for helping.